When I was in my early 20s, I was a member of a ghost hunting group. Our outings typically consisted of us BSing in cemeteries while smoking way too many cigarettes. This particular evening, however, we were exploring an abandoned school that was in the middle of being renovated into economy condos. During World War II, the school had been used as a military hospital and had since gained a reputation for being haunted. There were even rumors that the basement had recently been used for satanic rituals. My companion Brenda and I waited outside while her boyfriend Jeremy walked in. Because of the renovations, all of the doors and windows had been removed. There were also no walls or doorways inside, only studs and beams, enabling a clear view from one end of the gutted structure to the other. The building consisted of a basement, a main level where we were, and an upstairs. Brenda and I stood in the dark, the wind whipping around us. We were really nervous, as the cops were known to patrol the school due to its popularity with seekers of the paranormal and the occult. We were both armed with mini cassette recorders, each of them set to record as we quietly chatted outside the main entryway. After a minute or two, we could hear Jeremy walking around upstairs. We listened for a few moments. Step, 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 went heavy footfalls that sounded just like Jeremy's combat boots. There were parts of the upper floor missing, and Brenda was worried that Jeremy could fall through. "Jeremy!" she shouted. "Get back down here." The footsteps overhead continued as Brenda called out to Jeremy with no response. After a few moments, I looked down toward the opposite end of the building. A street light lit the corner, and I could see a man walking around the side of the building, at least 100 feet away from us. "There's someone coming," I whispered. We had no way to get inside the car that was parked just feet away because Jeremy had the keys. Brenda shouted up toward the second story, "There's someone coming, let's go!" As the figure in the dark got closer, we realized that the person approaching us was Jeremy. It was at that moment that it occurred to us that the footsteps we'd heard coming from the second story weren't his. We shouted for Jeremy to hurry. When he finally caught up, the three of us climbed into the car and sped off. We asked him how he'd gotten to the other side of the building. He told us that just inside the entryway, he'd found a ladder leading downward. Figuring it was a way into the basement, he followed it down, only to find himself back outside again, the ladder having gone through a window. He'd been outside of the building the entire time and had never made it to the upstairs level. Later that night, we listened back to the tapes we'd made. None of the recordings had captured the sounds of the footsteps, which should have been heard clearly. Something else showed up on the tapes instead. It was the sound of a man's voice, quiet at first, but growing louder as it approached. We couldn't understand anything that was being said, mostly incoherent mumbling, except for the very end. On both of our tapes, we clearly heard the man's voice say, "Get out of my house," immediately followed by the sound of a door slamming. To this day, we have no explanation for the voice on the tapes, or for how we captured the sound of a slamming door in a building with no doors.